Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Hotez, and you're watching TV Asia. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to our TV Asia viewers. I'm Dr. Sachdev reporting to you from the 40th Annual APPI Convention in the great city of San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to all of you. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our next guest, Dr. Peter Hotez, who is no stranger to any of us. He is a national sensation and well known in the medical community. Dr. Hotez is the founding dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine. He is a professor of pediatrics and molecular virology at Baylor College of Medicine, and he is also director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Hotez. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to join you in San Antonio for AAPI.
Yes, it is wonderful to have you, and I'm sure you are always inundated with a multitude of questions regarding COVID, and I hate to sound repetitious, but I do want to ask you a very basic and very simple question. Did we go wrong somewhere in not seeing this coming?
Well, you know, we started working on coronavirus vaccines more than 10 years ago, and this is at our Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development, which is co-headed by myself and my science partner for the last 20 years, Dr. Mary Elena Batazzi, and it's part of our School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor and Texas Children's. And the reason we did it was because, look, we saw SARS emerge out of southern China in 2002. We saw MERS in 2012. Mother Nature was not being coy here. She told us what's going to happen.
Giving a little hint, yes.
She said, you know, she's going to throw a third coronavirus pandemic at us, and sure enough, she did. So we started turning our attention because I like to say at our Center for Vaccine Development, we make the vaccines that no one else will make because they're for poverty-related diseases such as leishmaniasis and Chagas disease and hookworm and schistosomiasis that occur in South Asia and the poorest parts of Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
So, and we use a technology that's compatible with vaccine producers in low and middle income countries. And so we just said, you know what, we're going to apply this towards SARS and MERS. And then when the COVID-19 sequence came online in January 2020, we said, we got this. We're going to make a coronavirus vaccine.
Okay.
And that's what we did.
So the technology started to develop much before?
10 years ago,
10 years ago.
With NIH support.
Interesting.
And we hit the ground running making a COVID vaccine that was different from the ones you usually hear about, right?
Okay.
Because, you know, everyone knows about the mRNA vaccines, the adenovirus vectored vaccines, and the particle vaccines.
Yes.
The problem with those vaccines was there was not a mechanism to produce it locally in low and middle income countries. And that's what created all that vaccine inequality.
Okay.
But we had a technology that was already in place in India, in Bangladesh, in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Argentina, all over the world's LMICs. And so we made that vaccine. We didn't put a patent on it. And we licensed it to several vaccine producers in low and middle income countries. And the one that's furthest along is in India.
I see.
Where this company, Biological E, they're based in Hyderabad, scaled it up. They're now producing 140 million doses a month. And in India, it's known as Corbevax.
Corbevax, okay.
And it's the first pediatric vaccine.
Is it?
In India. So it's now 60 million doses have been given to 12 to 14-year-olds.
Really? So it's already started?
It's already in arms, yeah.
And that's only in India, not available here?
It's only in India, right, because we're hoping for emergency use listing globally. I mean, the irony is, even though it's probably the lowest cost, maybe the safest COVID vaccine out there, and you know, we think highly effective, because we didn't get U.S. government funding for it, we don't have a U.S. industry partner. It's likely going to be in place everywhere except the United States.
Oh, really? And you said it's very effective. Is it also based on mRNA technology?
No, it's based on a older technology. It's the similar technology used to make the recombinant hepatitis B vaccine that you've been giving to your patients, right? Because you're a pediatrician, you've been giving to your patients for years. So it's done through microbial fermentation in yeast. You grow up a big bioreactor of yeast,
Yes.
and it's also a vegan technology.
I
So no
see.
animal cells or human
Okay,
cells.
okay.
And that's very attractive, not only for countries like India, but now in Indonesia, we're producing a similar version. And because it's vegan, it could be made halal. So for Muslim majority
All
countries
right,
as
so
well.
it's okay.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's
True
really
vaccine
good to know.
diplomacy.
True vaccine diplomacy. That is really phenomenal news. I'm just so fascinated to hear about that. But getting back to the United States, because we do have this technology, we do have this mRNA vaccine, and of course, vaccine debate is ongoing. The one thing I want to know is, so many people, as a physician myself, patients come up to me and say, I got the COVID vaccine, I got the booster, and now I still got COVID. So comment on that. And why am I getting this vaccine? Tell us, what are the benefits of this vaccine, and how effective is it at preventing infection versus serious disease?
Well, when the vaccine was first rolled out, it was rolled out on the basis of 95% protection against symptomatic illness. And that was very exciting. And then our colleagues in Israel had shown that the mRNA vaccine was not only protecting against symptomatic illness, but was also protecting against infection, asymptomatic infection.
I see.
At the similar level. So that was very exciting. That's why the CDC, if you remember,
Yes.
in 2021 said, hey, guys, if you're vaccinated, masks can come off.
Right.
The problem was the virus strains mutated.
All right.
And that's
Okay.
when we started to see a series of variants going from the original lineage to Alpha, to Delta, to Omicron, to BA2, BA4, BA5, and each time they differed more and more from the strain that they used to
I
make the
see.
vaccine.
So,
And so they included escape mutants. So the bottom line is, if you're vaccinated and boosted, it's still keeping you out of the hospital
Right.
and ICU, but it's not protecting as well against infection.
Infection.
So let me give you an example. So I got the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. I got boosted twice, actually.
Twice, okay.
And then I still got breakthrough COVID.
Really?
But, I was still able to do my Zoom calls, and I
Sure.
wasn't feeling my best. And I was on CNN on Don Lemon,
Uh-huh.
coughing a bit,
Coughing.
but I still got through my day, and
Yeah.
the difference was, had I not been vaccinated and boosted,
Oh, yes.
I
You
would've-
would not have
I
been doing
would've
that
been in the
interview with
hospital,
Don
right,
Lemon.
right.
Yes, that's right.
So that's the difference.
Yes.
I think one of the issues with the mRNA vaccines is maybe they're not holding up quite as well as we'd like against
So you think perhaps
infection.
these
And-
boosters might be required more
Yeah,
often?
and so the boosters are going to be required more often, and the problem is the American people aren't accepting them. Because if
Yes.
you look at the percentage of people who've gotten boosted, only 30% of the U.S. population has gotten the one boost.
Right.
I got the second boost, but who else got it?
How
Not a
many?
lot
Very
of people.
few, very
And
few.
now we're going to be looking at maybe a third boost requiring. And so what I've been saying to the Biden White House is maybe we need to think about some alternatives and maybe bring in some other technology vaccines
That will last
that
us
can go longer period
yes.
of time.
And now the new combination Omicron with the old Omicron variant with new Omicron variant has now come about, correct?
Yeah,
The new
so
booster?
the FDA advisory committee is meeting this week and maybe next week about an Omicron-specific mRNA booster.
Yes, to include the
to
BA4 and
pair it with
5.
the original.
Yes.
The only and maybe that's going to be the answer. The only problem now is that's history. It's gone. Omicron is in the rearview mirror, and pretty soon BA4, BA5 will.
Yes.
So what's the point of giving an Omicron booster?
It seems like as soon as they develop a new vaccine,
Yeah,
it's already
so-
history, and then we're
so-
playing catch-up.
So I don't know that the FDA and CDC will move forward on that Omicron-specific booster. We'll see.
Oh, I see.
I mean, I'm curious to take it, only because by having two very different strains of the spike protein
Yes.
to make an immune response, maybe it'll make you more resilient to something totally different.
Totally
further on.
different.
But I don't know that the FDA and CDC, I think that's going to be too speculative. for them.
Yes.
I mean, I would do it because I'm a vaccine scientist. I'm
Right,
naturally
right. You're willing
curious,
to
but
be
but I
a
think
guinea
but
pig.
I'm not sure the American people will accept it. So I think the answer is looking for a technology that will broaden your protection and let it last
And
for,
last
for
longer.
years. Because,
Yes. Yes.
we're both trained in pediatrics, and we know what happens, right? When kids are infants, you give a series of
Yes,
primary immunizations.
that's right.
You wait
You
6
wait.
months to a year.
Yes.
And then you boost.
Right.
And what happens? You have 5 to 10 years protection, right?
Right.
You're not boosting every few months.
Yes,
So
exactly.
the expectation is all vaccines should do that, and I think
Right.
we could do that with COVID-19 as
Yes,
well.
yes, well, definitely, I think that's something on the horizon. Now, speaking of children, there was so much excitement about giving children the vaccine under the age of 5, 6 months to 5 years, and the FDA now has backed off on that, I understand, and they are considering to do some more studies and data?
No, they're all in. So it just got, so both the Pfizer vaccine and Moderna vaccine just got approved for 6 months to 5 years.
6 months to 5 years?
Well, emergency use authorized. And I think it's based on a sound body of scientific evidence, both for effectiveness and safety. That's not the issue. The problem is that, once again, will the American people accept it? Again, Commissioner.
So, interesting, you mentioned pediatrics. Now, the FDA has approved for emergency use authorization from 6 months to 5 years of age. Children may receive the COVID vaccine, either Pfizer or Moderna?
Yeah,
or
there's
just-
a little bit of difference. So the Pfizer vaccine is about 1/10 of the dose of the adult dose in the little kids and the
All
toddler
right.
vaccine. And it's 3 doses. So it's 3 micrograms at 0, 3 weeks, and then 2 months after that.
Okay.
And Moderna so far, I believe, is 1/4 of the adult dose, so
I see.
25 micrograms of
Okay.
mRNA, given 28 days apart. And we'll see, we might need a 3rd dose of
A
Moderna
third
as well.
dose also.
I think the bigger issue is parental acceptance, and here's why I say that. If you
Yes.
look nationally, only about 30% of parents are even vaccinating their 5 to 11-year-olds. And down in the southern states, we're looking at 11%. In Louisiana, Mississippi, I don't know where it is for you down in Victoria, Texas, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing pretty low
It
as
is
well.
low.
And so the question's going to be, what happens when we get to the toddler vaccine? We may be looking at single-digit % number
Oh,
acceptance.
yes, definitely. So you said it's a 3-dose series, so that's
For
not
Pfizer,
meaning
for the
for
Pfizer.
Pfizer. So it's 2 doses, not a booster, is not the 3rd dose, it's actually part of the primary series?
Yeah, people make a big deal about the nomenclature, whether you call it a booster or a primary series. I call it, I've always said the Pfizer vaccine was a 3-dose vaccine from the
3-dose
beginning.
vaccine, yeah.
But that's right, it's a 3-dose vaccine.
Okay,
yeah.
interesting. Now,
And, so I think there's going to be a lot of education for parents to make them understand why little kids still get pretty sick from COVID-19.
yes, yes.
We've had 200 to 400 deaths in the 6 month to 5-year-old nationally, and 20,000 hospitalizations. So it's still a bad actor in little
Yes,
kids.
yes.
So there's this narrative out there that it's only in young kids. In fact, the Indian government has not yet approved any vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds. So we're still, the DCGI, the Indian Regulatory Authority
Right.
has, but it hasn't been green-lighted to
Really?
give it. So Corbevax, the vaccine that we helped,
It's for
but by
older.
for the 12 to
12 to
14-year-olds, but we
14.
think it's going to be very important in the
Oh,
5 to
yes,
11-year-olds as
definitely,
well.
especially since you said COVID rates are so high among the pediatric population. And, the interesting thing is that they say that, well, children don't get as sick, so it's okay. I think this is the reasoning a lot of parents are using with
Well,
me.
well, I think that's-
Well, they'll get over it, it's like a cold or a flu.
Well-
So what is
well,
your
that-
reasoning to vaccinate?
Well, that's generally true, that the illness is often not as severe in kids as older adults. There's no question about that. But there's still a lot of kids who get very sick. And if you look, in the U.S., we've had 1,000 deaths, pediatric deaths from COVID-19.
Yes.
And more than pretty much any illness that we vaccinate kids for currently in the United States. So a lot more kids are dying from COVID-19 than they are for influenza. And we're all in about vaccinating kids for influenza.
Right.
But we're not doing that for COVID-19.
Right.
So it's just a matter of education,
still-
I think,
yes,
and
it
awareness.
still will take time.
And don't forget, we've got a lot of anti-vaccine activism here
Sure.
in the United States. And I'm
Yes.
sorry to say, Texas is
Is one of
the epicenter of the anti-vaccine.
epicenters.
And I know that because...
Well, not only vaccine hesitancy, mask mandate hesitancy
Yeah,
was
and-
there in the beginning as well.
And I'm a
so-
big target of that because, the original anti-vaccine assertion was false claims that vaccines cause autism. And my
Right.
youngest daughter has autism and intellectual disabilities. And I wrote a book
see.
a few years ago called Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, to
Right,
counteract
to
that.
counteract that.
And of course, that may be public enemy number 1 or 2 with the anti-vaccine. So I've become not only an expert in vaccine science, but anti-vaccine science as
Yes, yes. So where do you see now with these new variants coming about? We're seeing about 35%, I think, of cases now are due to the new variants. Do you see it coming to any kind of an ebb or a peak, or where is it going in the summer months, especially in Texas, let's say?
I think we're seeing a BA4, BA5 wave now in the United States, but it's not happening all at the same time. So I think it's already maybe peaked in New York and New Jersey, up in the Northeast, but now it's starting to go up in Texas. So all the numbers are coming up here in the South.
Yes.
So we're lagging behind. And so I'm hoping by, as we get into July, into the summer, it starts to go down.
Go down,
But-
especially before schools open up
But
again.
that may not be the end of it, because if you look what's happened in the pandemic in Texas, in the summertime, that's been in the hot summer months, that's been our worst
Yes.
time, right? In 2020, we
Yes.
had that big peak.
Yes.
And
Then
that was with
again
the
in
original lineage in 2021,
21.
and I'm sure you and
Yes.
your family,
Right.
were really worried being in Victoria
Oh,
about
yes.
what was going on.
Yes, yes.
So it hit Texas pretty hard. So I think we have to assume that we're vulnerable to yet another big variant coming from abroad in 2022, because what's happened is now most of our new variants of concern are coming from low and middle income countries. So in the case of Delta, right, that hit this country,
Came from India.
Came from India.
Right.
And then Omicron and its subvariants came from Southern Africa.
I see.
So the problem is we've failed to vaccinate the world's
Right.
LMICs, low and middle income countries.
Right.
So we have a lot of vulnerability there.
Yeah, I guess if you want to look at a little light around the silver lining around the cloud, at least the newer variants seem to be a little less, if you would call them potent they're contagious,
that's-
but they're
that's
not
what-
causing as much
Well, that's what
seriousness
people
of
say,
disease.
although I don't know how much of that is because, so many people have been infected and recovered or vaccinated or both, that maybe that's how some mitigating effects. But my personal feeling is that if you've not been vaccinated,
Oh, yes.
or if you've been under-vaccinated, meaning only getting 1 or 2 doses,
You
not
are at
gotten your
risk.
booster, you're still at
Yes.
risk.
Yes.
We have to remember, we're still losing 300 Americans every day to
Every day.
COVID-19. Now, it's not the 3,000 number,
Right, sure.
but if you had
But
if
still.
you had a brand new disease that was killing 300 Americans every day, that would be top line news. I
Sure.
can promise you.
Right.
So we've gotten that kind of complacency. It's still a bad actor.
Right, right, most definitely. So not seeing any end of the pandemic, anything anywhere near?
I was hoping, 2022 is finally going to be the year where things wind down, but it's
Yeah.
looking like, unfortunately, this is at least a 3-year pandemic, which shouldn't surprise us too much, because the influenza pandemic even though we call it 1918, actually went till 2021 or 2022.
Right.
So we
And
shouldn't
as you
be too
said, who knows,
surprised.
maybe another SARS virus is on the,
Well, that
not
we
too
think
far
also. So
away.
one of the things that we're doing with, in collaboration with Biological E in India, is looking to see if we can make a universal coronavirus vaccine.
Oh, I see.
Because what I've been saying is, look, we've had SARS-1 in 2002, MERS in
Right.
2012, COVID-19, and starting in 2019, we're going to have COVID-26 or COVID-32, so
Yes.
we better get ready.
Better get ready now, that's true.
Right.
Dr. Hotez, it's always a pleasure to hear you speak. I wish we had more time, but please, you are always welcome to be our guest on TV Asia, and we would love to hear more as this whole COVID thing evolves and vaccine technology. It's a fascinating field. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for watching TV Asia.
Thank you.